This is James Taylor, and you're listening to The Creative Life. The Creative Life podcast is a show created for you, the creative. If you're looking for inspiration, motivation, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's a musician, writer, artist, designer, performer, educator, or creative entrepreneur. They share their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, their insights, and much, much more. In this episode of The Creative Life, I talked to SARK, a San Francisco-based author, speaker, and international expert in personal well-being. We cover a lot of different areas. We talk about co-writing a book for the first time, what that process felt like, the idea of being succulent and what succulence means, how to be an artist, the inner wise self, and the idea of handwritten books. Hope you enjoy the episode. Hey, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to have SARK. SARK is a San Francisco-based author, speaker, and international expert in personal well-being and transformation, who has spent the past 2 decades helping men and women around the world tap into their creative spark, accept themselves fully, and embrace laughter and naps every day. She says she has been blessed with color, creativity, and an infectious laugh that I'm told could bring a smile to the devil himself. Dr. Mary Angelou said of her, "We in this world and this weary old world itself have a great gaping need for SARK." SARK's most recent book, Succulent Wild Love, and her partner Dr. John Waddell, details the 6 powerful habits she used to overcome her own fears to commit to an intimate life partnership. So SARK, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for that lovely introduction and your melodious voice.
And so share with our listeners, what's going on in your world just now?
Oh, my goodness. What's going on in my world? Well, John and I, this is my first co-authored book. This is book number 17 for me.
Wow.
And I had never co-authored a book. And I've been saying that it's my co-authored book in my co-authored life, because when I met John almost 4 years ago, I had not been in an intimate partnership like this one, engaged to be married, and had never thought that I would marry another person. I had married myself in 1997 and written about it in a book called Succulent Wild Woman, which was my statement of personal liberation. And this new book, Succulent Wild Love, is my statement of relationship liberation.
Fantastic. And there's an interesting word, that word succulent. So,
yes.
So where did you kind of first decide to use that word? Where did it kind of come to you? And just talk to me about what that word means to you.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. Beautiful question. Well, I live in San Francisco, California, and many years ago now, I guess in the 90s or maybe even in the 80s, I'm not actually sure, but a long time ago, I was walking in San Francisco did a lot of walking, drawing the city, and just having exquisite adventures and asking for and receiving miracles. And anyway, on this particular walk, I saw on the hill someone had etched into the cement of the sidewalk, "Succulence is powerful." And I jumped on the square immediately and said, "I am a succulent wild woman." and I am going to write about that. And I had published 5 books prior to that. And I then immediately fell to the ground and in fear and thought, I can never write about that. It's just too scary. And I felt like I was going to write about everything, about my sexuality, about every intimate thing about my life. And so I did do that. And I published Succulent Wild Woman, and it became an immediate major national bestseller and a phenomenon. And was optioned as a movie, and it just became very big, very fast.
So that word succulent, though, it really kind of comes also from the plant, the flower, and how that has a certain kind of connotation to it.
Yes, absolutely. A succulent, and as many know, but
I'm not a green-fingered person, so
yeah. Some people don't know, but a succulent is a plant that nourishes itself. It gathers what it needs from the environment and feeds it to itself.
That's beautiful.
So in that way, it is self-sustaining, and that's what I believe that is the opportunity for all of us to be a self-loving soul. I like to say we're put here to be really self-loving, filling ourselves up like full cups of self-love, and then sharing the overflow with the world and with other people in our lives.
So do you feel that you need to do that thing to kind of really to love yourself and first before you can have that overflowing to influence other people? Do you need to invest in yourself first?
Yes, I believe so. I mean, I tried to do it the other way, and many have. The other way is basically you come half empty to the world or to a partner and say, fill me. And then the person does or doesn't do things that you like or what you need, and then you walk around half empty, crabby, and feeling like you don't have enough love.
And does that relate as well? Maybe people, they go into a job or profession hoping that thing is the thing that fills them up. Can it work?
Exactly. Very wise. You know, whatever we do that we think is going to fill us from the outside, we are then at the mercy of whatever that thing is. If we have filled ourselves and continuously fill ourselves, by the way, it's not anywhere close to a one-time process. It's a daily process. It's a daily practice. And you mentioned our book, The 6 Powerful Habits for Feeling More Love More Often, are really a process by which to fill yourself up consistently every day.
So this is your 17th book. Let's go right to the very start. How did you first learn your craft as a writer? When did that first inspiration come to want to decide to get out your ideas in book form?
Well, I was 10 years old and living in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I was raised, and I had a wonderful family, but then there was also some really difficult stuff in the form of being abused by my older brother. And so I wanted to escape that, so I made best friends with a man in the neighborhood, and his name was Mr. Boggs, and he was 80 years old, and I would go to his house every day after school. And he just loved me, and he wanted to teach me to look close and look far. So he bought me a microscope and a telescope, and he took a great interest in me. And then he got really sick, and he went into the hospital. And my mother told me, Mr. Boggs is probably not coming back. You need to be, ready, that he might not make it. And I said, well, I need to be ready to write him something or create something every day that he's in there so that he does know how loved he is. And Mr. Boggs did make it out of the hospital, and he said, I think you saved my life. He said, no one else called or wrote while I was in there. He said, and I had to get out to see you.
Wow.
And I ran in the house and said, Mom, I'm supposed to be a beacon of hope that writes books for the world. And then she said, eat your peanut butter sandwich. But I wrote my first book that summer of my 10th year. I thought if I could do that for Mr. Boggs, what might I be able to do for the world?
And then from there, so you can come out into the world and start writing more and more. Did you get a sense of like a point in your writing as you were developing it as a writer that you like almost like a slight tipping point? You kind of felt easier, or you felt this is something's happening here?
Well, I'm happy to say for anyone listening who fears that it's too late or they haven't done enough or any of those things, I wrote a book when I was 10 and then did not write another book until I was 35 years old.
And why the gap? What was the reason?
A lot of procrastination, a lot of perfectionism, a lot of self-destructive living, and a lot of adventures, a lot of living of life. I lived around the world. I kept journals, but I never dared to publish them. So it wasn't until I was 35 that I had the courage to do so.
Was there something, was a catalyst to that, to actually at 35 to making that decision? I'm going to start writing again. I'm going to publish as well. What was that event?
Well, I had purposely opted out of the money system when I was 26, and I was living on barter and trade for almost 10 years. I decided that people with money were a problem, and I wasn't going to be a person like that. I had lived with millionaires and billionaires, which is a whole nother story. But I decided that it wasn't until years later that I realized that money was never the problem. The people were the problem. These people who had the money were the problem. So I was living as an artist and writer and as a, really living the life of a really a succulent wild woman. And so there I am at 35, and I had actually attempted suicide from the effects of the incest in my family. And thankfully it didn't work. I didn't succeed in the suicide. And I called the suicide prevention line, and they said, did you really want to die, or did you just want the pain to end? And I hadn't eaten or slept in 2 weeks from having flashbacks to this incest. And I said, I just want the pain to end. And so they encouraged me to get therapy, and I started therapy, on their lowest scale. They had a sliding scale. I remember it was $5 a week. And I would go over to an area of San Francisco that was pretty rough and tumble, and I would see this therapist there. And that started really probably about 15 years of very focused therapy. So anyway, back to your question, I lived in a little magic cottage, a very tiny 200 square foot cottage in San Francisco. And I had written something called How to Be an Artist. And it was my statement that we are all artists of life. And it was written in my journal, and I had someone over to tea, and they said, I read it to them, and they said, that should be a poster. And so I tore it out of my journal and put it up on the wall and said, there, now it's a poster.
So this is like a personal manifesto almost.
Yes. And they said, no, I mean for the world. And I said, well, I wouldn't have any idea how to do that. And as many people have said, but what I realized was someone else knows how to do that. So I took it to a catalog. I took it to a store that I knew had a catalog. They put it in, orders started flooding in. And then the publisher called me and said, we saw How to Be an Artist, and why don't you write books? And I said, well, I've wanted to write a book since I was 10. And the editor actually came over for tea at the Magic Cottage and sat in my garden and said, when are you going to write these books? And I said, why don't you leave right now and I'm going to start. And so I practically pushed her out the garden gate and went in the cottage and lit all the candles and spent 2 weeks writing a book called A Creative Companion. And that was my first book.
Beautiful. And from there, obviously, you've written many books from there as well and gotten a great success. Can you tell us about a time when you've worked on maybe one of these books or a project and you've given it your heart and your soul, like everything you do, but for whatever reason, it just didn't work out like maybe you'd hoped at the start? And more importantly, what were the lessons that you took away from that experience?
That's a great question. Well, it's interesting because all of my books have been a great success, so I can't point to those, but I can tell you that various business, I started a business in 1993 because that poster, How to Be an Artist, I wrote 18 other posters on 18 other subjects, and then I made 11,000 How to Be an Artist posters by hand. because I didn't know how to get them printed.
That's not a very scalable business.
Well, yeah, it was like, well, if that was the only one, but then I'd written these 18 others. And so I will tell you that I've probably made every mistake in business that you can make. I worked with friends. I borrowed money. What else have I done? I have had all kinds of projects fail and had, partnerships dissolve, had things that we started doing that couldn't be done. The only thing I didn't do was stop doing it. I didn't go bankrupt and I didn't stop having a business. So that's been some 30 years now. And
from these times where you've had these little blips in the road, have there been kind of lessons that you've taken away in terms of now having gone through those experiences, saying, okay, well, on the business side of what I need to do as a writer and as a creative, as an artist, I need to be thinking about these things?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would say probably, when they always say hindsight is 20/20 vision. Whenever you look back, you can say, oh, I now see what I could have done. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't necessarily see it. So the good thing is once you've gotten some distance, you can provide that insight, which is why I'm glad you're asking this question. I would say my facing practical things in a practical manner. So, for instance, finances, clear agreements with other people. What is the profit model of the business? These were all things I didn't know. I thought you just made stuff and people bought it and everything was fine from there. Like if you just kept creating, then there couldn't possibly be any problems. Well, I found out all sorts of things. I found out there's things called return on investment. There's things called cost of sales. There's all sorts of things. So to educate yourself, that's probably the biggest thing I would say.
And then in this creative journey that you've gone through, Can you tell us about any significant insights or light bulb moments in your life, those times when you've just had this aha moment, you say, oh, this is the path I need to do, or this is a particular direction I need to be going with in terms of my writing or the kind of things that I'm thinking about. Can you talk to us about any of those times in your life?
Absolutely. One of the habits in the book of 6 Powerful Habits for Feeling More Love More Often is really teaching people how to connect with what I call the inner wise self. And this is inside every single person, and they might think of it as their higher self or pure positive energy or the Holy Spirit. It doesn't really matter what the name is, but it's the knowledge that there's something inside you larger than you that loves you unconditionally. Most people are aware of this part, but most people are not activating it and consulting with it every day about every single subject of their lives. So every one of my creative projects, every part of my business is all informed by my inner wise self. So what I mean by that is I go in and I ask. I don't just do things willy-nilly, or I don't just say, oh, this sounds fun. I check it. Like, what does this mean? How can I be of service? How does this serve, the greater good? What is good for me here? These are the kinds of questions to ask yourself, and that I've asked myself and ask myself. I do it before I accept any interview. I do it before I do anything. And so that informs everything.
But how, in this, when things are busy and that you're getting different opportunities are coming your way, and how do you quiet yourself to be able to hear that, whether it's the voice or that you talk about this idea of the inner wise? How do you clear out the clutter and the monkey mind and all the noise? So you can actually hear what you're saying.
Yes, and there's a wonderful process we teach in the book. There's the whole process is taught in the book along with an awareness practice sheet, because I really want to be able to show people how to do this. But the way that I do it is I started by connecting with what I call inner wise self love notes. And this is where you get a transmission. You just basically sit with pen and paper, and you can do it in 5 minutes. So most things that I teach are 5 minutes or less, because I don't have a large attention span and I don't like long, laborious processes. So you can connect really quickly, and then from there you can ask open-ended questions and you can say it just into the air. Inner wise self, what do you think about this interview? Or what do you think about, is it time to get my oil changed in my car? Just the most basic things, from the most esoteric things to the most basic things. Once you establish this connection and you begin communicating, your inner wise self will give you immediate and instant answers. And so you can still have clutter and hear the answers, is what I'm telling you.
And then this, obviously, the latest book, Succulent Wild Love, with your partner. Having this an intimate life partnership was something that you hadn't had up to this point, and now, thankfully, you've kind of got that, and you're enjoying the fruits of that as well. But what was holding you back from that? And I'm interested to know, as a writer, as a creative, you've often gone through times where you may have had some kind of creative block or something that's been holding you back. Was it any way kind of similar to that feel, or was it a completely different thing that was kind of going on?
No, I was afraid of love. I was afraid of feeling trapped. I was afraid of losing my freedom, my creativity. I was afraid it would affect my creativity. I was afraid that I would become consumed. I was afraid I wouldn't do it well. I wouldn't be able to love someone every day.
Yeah.
It sounds so silly now, but honestly, and I wrote about it a lot in the book. And I wrote about my journey of love. I wrote about what I'd tried before. I wrote about why I got inspired to continue to be able to really create and find this great love. And, to be reminded that love does not come from a person. Love comes through a person. So it's very important to remember this, because if the person dies or leaves or, needs to do something else, you're not going to lose love. You might lose that person, but you're not going to lose the love.
And I think that's interesting what you just said there about being worried about losing your kind of creativity, this creative spark that you have by having a deeper kind of relationship with someone as well. It sounds a little bit similar to I was talking to someone the other day who was very creative person, and they were doing very interesting work, and they were worried about getting involved in meditation and mindfulness practice, because they were worried that this thing, this creative kernel, was going to get obliterated, because they were quite enjoying the monkey mind stuff that was kind of going on as well with them. So how, what was your kind of thinking about that your creativity was going to be stunted in some way, the independence was going to be stunted, and that was where you were kind of having to hold back a little bit?
Oh, hold back a lot. I mean, and it's so funny. I'm so glad you're talking about that and mentioning that, because I remember years ago when I gave up caffeine, because caffeine was not doing well with my body. And I thought, how am I going to be creative without caffeine? And then and then about 8 months ago, I gave up sugar. And I was like, how am I going to be able to be creative without sugar? So I'm always on the lookout for like, what's going to interfere? Meanwhile, what I now understand is whatever it is that I want to experiment with and explore is going to fill me up, is going to be good for creativity. And so John turned out to be one of the most creatively affecting people ever. I mean, I never thought I would co-author a book. I'm such a specific person, and I had my own way and style, my own handwriting, and my art is in my books. My books are handwritten and full of art. And I thought, how's this ever going to work? Well, I've never had more fun writing a book than I did with John. And we write well together. We also edit well together, which is very rare. And so I mean, it was immensely creatively inspiring.
Which is fascinating. And is there a personal habit that you have that you think contributes to your success as a creative person, and your success as a writer as well?
Oh, absolutely. These 6 powerful habits. I mean, when John and I met, I brought 3 core teachings, which I use in my life every day to be creative and successful and happy and loving. And he brought 3 core teachings to my life that did the same for him. And we married those into the 6 powerful habits that are in this book, Succulent Wild Love.
And he comes at it obviously from he's a psychologist, I believe.
He's
as
a
well.
Psychologist, yes, and he's a metaphysical teacher, and he's very much the conscious and practical application of the law of attraction.
So this is interesting, because I find you often when you speak to people in some of the sciences, that are in doctors in different areas, they can be a little bit snobbish a bit about things that you can't exactly show an evidence base for. And I would imagine a lot of the things, especially the way that you speak as well, it's very much a kind of a humanist, holistic way that you approach a lot of things. So how did you find a place to work from?
Oh my goodness, yeah. Well, we did a wonderful sharing. We wrote in the book we have 3 voices in the book. Each of our distinct voices are evidenced by, he has a regular font and I have a SARK handwritten. When you see the SARK handwriting, it's me speaking. Yeah, and then we have a third, which is the narrator, which you can sometimes figure out if it's a blend or if it's one of us speaking. But he is more practical and logical, and I am more, you could say whimsical, ethereal, but yet grounded. So our approaches are similar enough where there's lots of overlap. And then when there's not, I think it's very good for people. They can see, you don't have to be, I didn't find my twin. He's not the male version of me. For a while I thought, for a while I thought I should find the male version of me. And then it's like, that's a nightmare,
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. So I'm so happy to say that it's providing and speaking about the book now and teaching from it. So many more men feel more comfortable. I mean, my books, I think, were alarming to men. My brother would tell me, I love your books, but I can't read them. It's like they don't make enough sense, or they actually were very sensible, but they're written in bright colors with sort of impressionist. They just sort of jump around. So this book is the most sort of highly, I guess you would say, edited and conceived it's a practical book. It really is how to receive and feel more love more often. It's a whole new philosophy of love and relationships for everyone. So it's not just for couples, it's for people who we call soulfully single, who may want to remain soulfully single. It's not this whole idea that you have to find someone and get with someone. Which I find exceedingly annoying, by the way.
So let's imagine, what advice, having gone through this creative journey, what advice would you give to that 35-year-old woman who is could be America or Europe or Asia, who is that soulfully single and has this thing inside them where they think, I want to write that first book, or I want to do my artistic work that I've got, or I have these ideas for songs, but they're being held back. Where should they start? What should
I really want them to start. First of all, consider reading Succulent Wild Love and learn these habits and practice them. They're not easy. It's a life's work, but they will support you right now in being able to be more of yourself and therefore more creative. And then we also designed a wonderful mini accelerator, which is just a 7-day way to explore. If you're not ready to buy the book, we made a free thing for anyone listening to your podcast that they can have.
And all this, what we're going to be on the show notes, if people go to jamestaylor.me and just put in SARK in the search bar, you'll be able to get all the things that we're talking about. And talking about tools and resources, is there an online resource or a tool like an Evernote or something that you use that you really love working with?
Well, I continue, I've explored everything. I've explored Evernote, I've explored new ones, and for whatever reason, I still stick to the notes on an iPhone that's just a simple yellow note, and it's now really a lot more searchable, and you can put things in folders, and it's, for me, it's sort of plain, and it seems to work well. So I just use that. I write a lot on there. In fact, I wrote most of the book on there.
And it's interesting because your books are known for being kind of handwritten, the look of them as well. So I'm imagining you don't use any kind of super high tech. You're not using, some of our previous writer guests have used things like Scrivener or Final Draft and things like that. So you're writing them very simply on notes, and then you go and then actually write them out after that.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you, John and I edited the entire book on something called Quip. QUIP, and I do recommend that. You can see the changes on the side, and you can see what the other person has done, and we edited the entire book on Quip. Marvelous. So I think that's a good thing to tell people.
And I'll put that on the show notes as well. So if you could recommend just one record and one book to our listeners that you think that it's interesting, they should check out, what would they be?
Well, of course, I'm going to say SARK.
Apart from your own, obviously.
You didn't say that.
Apart from your own, unless you have a new record coming out as well.
Oh, you know what's coming to mind, James? I think Donovan, the Sutras.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be my statement. Donovan, the Sutras.
Donovan, the Sutras. And let's imagine if you woke up tomorrow morning and had to start from scratch. So you have the tools of your trade as a writer and as a speaker, and the knowledge you've acquired over the years, but no one knows who you are. You have to really kind of hit the reset button. How would you restart things?
Oh, I love that question. Wow. Well, and I'm happy to say I would do exactly the same thing. I would live like a full cup of self-love, sharing the overflow. I would ask for and receive miracles. I would share my writings and my art with anyone who wanted to see them. I would live like that beacon of hope. I would live that way. I would be an embodied example of that, and I would be of service wherever I can.
Well, SARK, thank you so much for coming on the show. Share the best ways that listeners can connect with you and find out more about your writing and the projects you're working on.
Oh, yeah, they can go right over to my Planet SARK, planetsark.com. And then you'll put on there the wonderful Love Accelerator that we created. You'll have a link for them there, or should you want me to say it?
Absolutely. And I know you've got a very sizable Facebook following as well now.
Oh my goodness, yes, we have the most lively Facebook. I love Facebook, and I'm on there all the time, and I read everything, and I reply a lot, and it's just my great joy. And of course, I have a wonderful team that helps me. But yeah, they can go to planetsark.com/more love now, just all together, more love now. And it brings them to that wonderful 7-day accelerator that I created with videos that can show them how to communicate with their inner wise self, find out what we call the love print. Instead of a blueprint, what is the love print that you came in with, and how might you want to make adjustments to that love print?
Well, Sark, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure speaking to you and learning about your world and the writing that you've been doing as well. And I wish you all the best now with this new book.
Oh, you're just wonderful, and what a wonderful service you're providing to every single person listening. Thank you. It was an honor to speak with you.
Hey, James Taylor here again. And if you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.